What's up, creative investors? Today I have a true expert when it comes to investing in mobile home parks and creative finance. This is a guy who coined the phrase poor man's multifamily and is also making $50,000 a month from these types of investments. Today we're going to be breaking down how you can start or scale your mobile home park investment journey. Tyler Ware, how's it going, dude?
What's up, Jose? How you doing, man?
Doing great, dude. I know you told me you went away cross this morning. How was the drive and like revisiting one of your parks?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. We had to do some maintenance over there. It's a 48 pad park we bought last year. Last year we closed on it, and it's doing good. We're just trying to finish getting it up the floor.
So how did you get that deal?
Through word of mouth. It was actually a deal that my buddy he turned it down. It was a cash deal, and the guy he was offering another type of owner financing on it, but it wasn't right. He wanted a big down payment. And then I didn't think it was going to work out, but after calling him back in several months, we were able to negotiate a Morby method actually on that deal.
Oh, really?
It was a two-part deal.
Oh, wow. Well, definitely want to get into that. But first, for the ones that don't know you, who is Tyler Ware, and what's your background story?
Yeah, I'm from Douglas, Georgia. I went to school to be an accountant. I worked there for 7 years, and they were long. And I'm not really made to sit in the office, but I did. I learned a lot, but I knew I wanted to, go towards financial freedom and really just have some other way to get out of the office. And I was trying to get and buy individual mobile homes, like on single lots. And I wrote down I wanted to leave my job by this certain amount of time.
At what age were you when you thought that?
When I did this,
Yeah.
that was 4 years ago.
Oh, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was probably 4 years ago when I started doing that. I started really working toward it because my daughter's 4, and I actually bought my first property, rental property, December, and she was born in August, so 4 months after she was born.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so I guess, did you first buy a house before you bought a mobile home park?
Yeah, so the first thing I ever bought was I bought some land and a repossessed double wide, and I moved it out there and renovated it.
Okay.
It was 20 acres of land and a double wide, and we gutted it, took it to the studs, and put sheetrock in there, and just made like a house. It was just our personal
Gotcha. Your
rent
primary
residence.
Okay.
But we basically did a live-in flip there.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in it for 2 to 3 years, and then sold it and bought the house we live in now in 40 acres. And
You said 40?
yeah,
Yeah, well.
and renovated it. We had we bought that house actually before we sold the mobile home. So we bought the land in the mobile home and did that renovation and lived there for 3 years. And before we sold it, we bought this other house. It was land. It sat on the market for a while.
Yeah.
And it had blue carpet. It was really dated. But the outside was a nice brick house in a good spot.
So when you said you found it, was this on Facebook?
Yeah, it was just on
Marketplace?
MLS. No,
On MLS?
Yeah, me and my wife, at the time, part of the journey was we became realtors.
Okay.
Doesn't have that much now, but it was for some active income then. And
What year was
we
that?
didn't know how to get started, so that was, we become realtors,
Yeah, you get that feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
What year was that, though?
I don't know the exact year, but if we lived on Old River, that was where the double wide was, for 3 or 4 years. It's probably 2 years in.
Wow. Okay. And then, when did you start learning about, creative financing?
Oh, I didn't really start learning about creative finance till I did that first deal in 2020 when I bought that rental property. I use creative finance for that if you want to get into that.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I just called the seller. The land actually backed up to me. I've said this was a curse kind of before because I only took one cold call.
Really?
And I bought the property.
Was this through the MLS or off market?
No, it was off market.
So how'd you find them?
I just Googled him.
Okay, so you just drove around for dollars or just saw
Well, yeah, I
property?
guess I drove around for dollars and realized that there was 4 mobile homes on a parcel that backed up to the land that I own.
Okay.
And so I just called the guy
Gotcha.
and built up some rapport with him, and he knew the accounting firm that I worked for, and he ended up selling it to me. And I put 50% down, and he carried the other 50% for a year. And I was going to do a BRRRR where I renovated all the houses and pulled it out.
And refinance it, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't quite work out. I ended up paying him off at the end of the 12 months.
What was the purchase price?
It was only like $110,000. So I think we put down, and the money I put down was money from the sale of my house, the double wide.
Also, you sold the double wide to get the mobile home.
Yeah, so the first part of the journey is when we bought that house in double wide on Old River.
Yeah.
We lived there for a while, renovated it, and it was like a live-in flip. We built up a lot of equity. I think I bought it for $55,000, and after doing renovations on the property and the double wide, I was probably in it for $100,000, and I sold it for $175,000. And we were realtors on that, so I didn't have any commissions to pay.
Yeah. So this was the one that was on the 40 acres, right?
No, this is the one that was on a double wide and 20 acres.
Okay, gotcha.
Then right before we'd sold this, we bought a house on 40 acres.
Gotcha.
A brick house.
Okay.
That we gutted and renovated too.
Yeah.
And that's the house that we still live in. But we just bought it with a traditional loan. We put 20% down on it. And I got a loan, like a line of credit on my property on Old River.
Yeah.
And took that money and put it down on the traditional purchase of the brick house. Mm-hmm. Then we renovated it and just sold my Old River property and moved into the brick house. But I still had, we did a $50,000 renovation on that house, so I still had $100,000 left, just about, or maybe 70 to 100, I can't remember exactly. But that's what I took to put into the other rental property. So I paid the guy $50,000 down.
Yeah.
And then I renovated those units
and financed the $60,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what was the interest on that?
I don't even remember. He wasn't going to charge me any interest.
Because you were going to pay him in a year, right?
Yeah, because it was just going to be 12 months. And I think he started charging me like a nominal thing, like $1,200 or something like that.
Okay. And what was his reason of selling?
I just called him up. He wasn't going to sell, wasn't for sale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he just happened to say he thought about selling before.
Mm-hmm. How old was he? Was he like in the
He's an older guy.
Okay.
But he ran a construction company around here. And he just had other stuff. He had properties here and there, and he just didn't need it anymore.
Wow. And were these tenant occupied already?
Yes.
Wow. It was already cash flowing already.
Yep. Then I had to kick one out. Then two of them left. That's a whole other story. But
I mean, it's still cash flowing though, right?
Yep, it was absolutely. It was cash flowing.
So that matters.
Yeah. Ever since then, that's why I'm a big advocate on buying things that are already there versus developing from the ground up, because you can walk into cash flow. It's just a little bit less risky, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Because I've been telling you, my dad and I are over here trying to build one from scratch. We've got 2 mobile homes so far, but like you got to deal with the city on like permits and all that stuff, and they're increasing their prices. It just rather than buying one already cash flowing, like. Wow.
And if you've got the land, like you said, and you don't have to tote a note on it, then that is possible. But it's so hard to just float something from buying the land, clearing it out, getting your roads in, putting your septic tanks and your sewers and your water.
It's just too much of a hassle, man. So I guess that was a moment whenever the light turned on in your head saying, okay, I'm getting a higher ROI when it comes to buying these mobile home parks already cash flowing. So like, I guess, since this one was easy to find, how did you find your second one?
The same way, but it took a lot longer. So I bought this one, and it took me about a year. I was actually able, so this was 4 mobile homes, but because it backed up and touched my land I already owned, I was able to reparcel it and add a 5th mobile home there.
Gotcha.
Because I had enough road frontage. I had to work with the county out there. I had enough road frontage, but in that particular situation, you had to have an acre per dwelling, so it was only 4 acres. But I got it replatted and took an acre that I already owned, and they let me put 1 more there. So I made it into 5 mobile homes. And then from there, that took me renovating all of them and buying and moving another one in there. It took me about a year. And then I bought my next park, which was the same way I bought this one. It just took a lot longer. Like I said, I made 1 cold call, and the guy answered and sold me the property. After negotiation. But yeah, it was crazy, much crazier. Like I said, it's a blessing, but then that's not how it works. So going forward, it was kind of frustrating. I wanted to buy more and find more properties.
Yeah.
So, but I did the same thing. I just basically called all the people that own mobile home parks in the town.
Wow.
And it was the last one that it had just transacted actually. It just sold a year prior. So I thought there was no way that they'd want to sell it again. But he did. And I almost didn't call the guy. Somebody said, I think he wants to sell. So I did call him, and that's the one I ended up doing. He had bought it for his son. It didn't really work out. They weren't, for whatever reason, couldn't take it to the all the way to get it right.
Yeah.
So he sold it to me for $10,000 more than he bought it for.
Okay, so a hotel basically, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Gotcha.
He said he didn't want to lose money on paper.
So how did you provide value then? Well, how did you provide value where he couldn't?
Well, he wanted to sell. He wanted to get out. He was having issues. He didn't want to manage it. He bought it for his son to manage and to work. Yeah. And that wasn't working. His son wasn't really doing it.
Okay.
He really had a different model. The rents were so low. They hadn't been raised in years. This was a true mom and pop place. And they didn't have any debt on it. They had owned it. And they finally sold it to him. He was another businessman in town. And he thought his son was going to do it. It was the first one they had owned, mobile home park wise. That was just, they had heard that's what to do or whatever through the grapevine. But it was more work than he wanted, and he didn't want to raise those rents like they needed to.
Gotcha.
They were just weren't doing a good job managing it, and because of that, they were losing money. So because of that, I took a headache away from him.
Yes.
He wanted to get out from under it because it was a problem for him, and I wanted it because there's still opportunity. He still hadn't raised the rents. So even though he'd bought it for that high price, if I wouldn't raise the rents, I mean, most of these houses were $200 per under on rents.
Lot rent or the mobile home?
Mobile home rent. Yeah.
When was this?
3 years ago, probably.
That's low.
They were. I mean, a double wide would be like $400.
Where they
lot rent, water, trash.
Yeah, where they at now? Like
$850, $975.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was an easy solution for him. I wonder why he didn't raise them.
It's still a lot of work.
Okay.
I mean, it is. Some people, I had some turnover. Of course, people were mad because they hadn't had their rent raised in a long time. When I took over, they were cutting the grass, which means that some was cutting, some wasn't. It was just wasn't being ran correctly, and he didn't know how to do it. And it was for his son, and his son didn't want to do it. So, I just took that. I paid him a little bit of money. He got out from under the debt. He got what equity he had back, and he got out from under his problem. Wow.
So I'm sure since you took away the burden from him, I'm sure you got like a good deal from it, right?
Well, I paid him 10 more than he paid for it, but at the time when I bought it, no, it was
finance.
Yeah, we can get into that if you want to. But when I bought it, this is important. I didn't think it was a deal. It was the biggest thing I'd done. I bought those 5, and then this was like 40 lots, and it was only, which is a lot, but it was like $800 and something $1,000.
Yeah,
which was huge for me. I never bought anything. My house didn't cost that,
Yeah. So how did you underwrite it, or how did you know it was a thing to buy?
Well, I knew because of what I was already doing. I knew what the rent should be.
Okay.
Then I knew based on his rent roll what he was getting.
Gotcha.
And so I knew there was a lot of value there, and there was empty lots that already had electric and septic you could move houses on. So I knew that there was a lot of value I could add. Even though I wasn't super experienced at the time in underwriting, I could easily see that if I took the rent roll and I see what they're charging, and I say, well, if I bump this to what I know I'm getting right now on these houses, that right there will put me at this. And then, if I add some of these, my buffer was basically, and then if I can add some of these houses, like I added this other one, I've already got lots, which I buy them and sit them there.
Yeah.
Then I know I can make more money. So that was kind of how I looked at it.
Wow.
It was a value add. And, and you asked me how I bought it. So I learned about something called cross collateralization.
Okay.
From my buddy. I didn't know what it was, and even when I did it, I didn't know that's what I was doing. But I had a buddy who would take liens against his other properties, the bank would, and he wouldn't know to this day know that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. They would take a lien on something else he owned as a down payment, basically, on the property that he would buy. And so that's what I did on this one. Well, so I said that I was going to take and burr out of that 5 unit and pay the guy off like with a loan. Well, the reason I didn't do that is because I decided to keep it as equity. So I had bought it for 110, And then I think when I had it appraised at $275. After I'd renovated units, put new people in there, raised the rent, added the 5th house. So there was a lot of equity that built up there from doing that. So basically, I then took that property that was paid off and used it with cross-collateralization to buy the second one. So the bank would lend like 85% loan to value. Mm-hmm. So they took basically a lien against my paid-off property, and I didn't really pay anything to buy the $800,000 property.
Yeah, I feel like for someone starting out, like cross-collateralization and putting that much debt on you sounds like a big scary thing to do, Yeah. And I'm sure, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the thing that made you feel more comfortable in doing it was that you were confident. Like if you were to raise the rents, then you'd be good.
Well, it was scary. Like I said, because it was a big purchase, but I felt good because, like I said, I didn't. So I took my profits from my sale of like my other house that I had and paid off. So like it was only $110,000. It was the purchase price of that 5-unit. So I put 50 down, which was from the sale of my other house, and then he financed the other 60 for that year. And so my renovations were funded through the cash flow of the property. Because that year I didn't have any payments. It was no payments. It was, I paid him like $1,200 interest, and I just wanted me to cut the check when the 12 months was up. So during that time, when I was getting all these rents, I was just putting it back into the property to do the renovations.
Yeah.
So that fueled the renovations on that. Mm-hmm. And then when we got to the end, where are we going with this? When I got to the end with that, I felt more confident in buying the other one because I didn't have any debt on that still. So then I had the whole, which I mean, it wasn't, my payment was bigger, of course, than $800,000 property then. Mm-hmm. It was on this one, but I had a paid off property that was spitting out like $30,000 or something a month.
Gotcha.
As long as I kept it fed. Mm-hmm. And I had a year worth of managing tenants and seeing how they paid. And also I had a property manager that was going to help me with this one. When I bought this one, I was still working at my accounting job. Well, this whole time I was still working. I hadn't left my W-2 yet.
Oh yeah, so you bought 2 mobile home parks while you're still having your W-2 job.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep. And so I had a property manager. That's also what helped me feel a little more confident in it.
Yeah.
Because she was very experienced here, and I had a relationship with her through somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so she knew too what the rents should be. So what I had already taken them to versus what she knew they should be, because she's got a bunch of houses that she's renting for this. Yeah. It gave me the confidence to pull the trigger on it. It was very scary. But like I said, that was after my daughter had been born, and I'd kind of come to terms with like I had to do something else because I was working like 60 hours a week at the accounting office, and I mean you can look forward and like everybody's still working that much, even the main partners, and so I just knew that wasn't what I wanted to do, so it kind of fueled me to.
Yeah, you had to support the family.
Yeah, just take the risk, I guess.
Yeah, gotcha, dude. So Waycrest Mobile Home Park, is that the one where the seller was going to wait 3 years until they got paid?
Well, it is, but it was a 2-part purchase. Okay. So we closed on that one last December. It may be to the date, I think it was the 27th. So almost a year ago today. It was a 48-lot park in Waycross and a 20-lot park in Douglas that needed a bunch of infill. Where that delayed payment comes in is the Douglas park was supposed to be 24 lots. Mm-hmm. And when we got down to it and we talked to the tax assessors and we're doing our due diligence, it ended up only being 20 lots. So it was 4 lots short. And because of that, we were able to negotiate a credit. It's like $87,000. And we proposed to him, instead of taking it off of the price, that he take it in deferred payments. Yeah. And he didn't mind because all that money is 0% interest on him anyway. And he was getting a big enough chunk, since this is a mortgage method and he gets a lot of it up front, like 60%. He was cool with that. And so basically we didn't have to make any payments to him for about 3.5 years.
Yeah, who brought up the 3 years, him or you?
Well, the 3 years got brought up because that's how long the $87,000 stretches out. You know, our terms already had a payment amount. So the debt for the 0%, so the 0% for 8 years was amortized over 40 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that payment was already the payment, and we just credited that over the months based on the $87,000 we needed. So it was like $87,000 divided by, if our payment was $4,000, that, and that gave us the number of months. And that just kind of
That's
ended
how
up
it
being
played
3.5 years.
Yeah. Okay, cool, man. So I kind of want to switch gears, since we're running short on time. I guess for someone new starting out, dude, what would be the platforms they can get access to in order to find a mobile home park and start investing?
Well, you can drive for dollars, or look on Google Maps. I mean, those are two of the simplest ways to do it.
And cheap.
If you pull up on Google Maps, they're both free. And you can look over your town, and just like you could tell if something's an apartment complex, you can tell if it's a mobile home park. And a lot of the counties, you can get data from them for free for their tax assessor websites.
Yeah.
On what mobile home parks are in the county, because all the counties have them zoned out because they want them to pay the correct taxes.
Yeah, and
so they have the accurate data. I've tried to use Props and Extreme, and I mean Deal Sauce. It may be good for finding mobile home parks because I've heard it's got some more up-to-date data.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard in the smaller regions if you're looking at a smaller area, smaller county, less populated, that to have that updated tax information on all the mobile home parks. But the counties themselves, they always have updated data.
So would you say that, you've gotten all your mobile home parks just literally from driving for dollars mostly, right?
Yeah, cold calls and word of mouth. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so I guess the next step was, how would one analyze a deal? What would be the first things you would look at whenever you're trying to buy one?
Well, they would come to my 2-day boot camp. They would come to my 2-day boot camp.
Yes,
where I'm going to teach them how to go find deals.
Awesome.
And because it's a little, you need to get a rent roll. You need to look at the financials if they have any. A lot of times they don't. You need to look at their bank statements. You need to know how many pads and whether they're park-owned units or just lot rents. Just different things. You need to do a little bit of education. But we're going to have a class, and that's what we're going to be teaching.
When is that going to be starting?
It'll be starting in the new year in 2025. Yep.
Okay.
We'll get it up and going and teach people how to go find them, what kind of deal to find, and how they can sell it or take it down if they want to themselves.
Awesome. And then I guess the other thing also is type of examples when it comes to purchasing one and then adding value to it. What do those value adds look like? Well,
they can look all different, and it just depends on what the problem in that specific park is. In my past parks, there's been value adds through rent increases when the rents are under market, and I can go in and bump them up to market. And also, but you have different ones. I own parks that have park-owned homes and just lots that are lot rent, and that can vary depending on what people talk about on mobile home parks.
Yeah.
But both of those can be under market. So if the rents are under market, whether it's a lot rent or a house, you can do that. Maybe the rents aren't under market, but the houses need renovating. Awesome. So we can go in and we can renovate houses, then we can raise the rents.
Yeah.
Or if it's infill, if they have empty lots that are already ready for houses to be set on, we can go in and infill houses, and then that'll raise the value.
Awesome. And then going back to the rent rolls, obviously, going back to the things that you want to look out for whenever you buy one of these is the rent rolls, making sure that, it is cash flowing as is. And if it's not cash flowing, you want to see where you can provide the value, that way you can increase the rents, right? And then what were some of the other things you've mentioned? The terms would have to be good, right? You would have to make sure that you're still cash flowing on those.
Yeah, everything I buy is value add. So I have to be able to add enough value for it to be worth my time. I won't want to buy a park now unless I can, my average cash flow is about $350 a lot.
Okay.
And I'm not buying anything less than 40 pads. So right now I'm looking at buying parks in Gainesville, Orlando, and Tallahassee, 40 pad minimum. Of course, I'd love county water and sewer.
Yeah.
But I will look at anything that's a minimum of 40 pads.
Gotcha. Is that all that's in your buy box?
Yes, I will look at anything in those areas that is 40 pad minimum, and probably I want it to be 70% occupied if it's only 40 pads. I don't want to buy a 40 pad park that's only got 15 pads occupied because I don't want to do that big of an infill.
Yeah.
But if it's a 40 pad park, or if it's a 80 pad park that only has 40 pads occupied, I'd buy something I would be fine with. That's why I'd say that Orlando, Tallahassee, Gainesville areas, Central Florida, 40 pad minimum. And if you want to reach out, I can tell you a little bit more, but that's the main things that
Gotcha. Do you own ones
PG
outside of the Georgia?
No, right now all my parks are in South Georgia.
Okay, awesome. It's a good place.
Yeah.
And then when
It's been good to me.
Yeah, it has. I guess when 2025 is around the corner, dude. I guess what are your goals?
Yeah, so in 2025 it leads into that. We're gonna start having our classes, Poor Man's Multifamily.
Awesome.
This is my brand, and this is what my classes are gonna be called, where I'm gonna teach people how to go find these parks and how to get a little bit of financial freedom through mobile home parks themselves. And my personal goal is to buy 4 parks in the Gainesville, Orlando, or Tallahassee area. My trajectory has been like buy about 2 parks. I bought 2 parks. It took 12 months to stabilize them.
Yeah.
And a year ago, I bought 2 parks. A year ago, like today almost. And it took about 12 months to stabilize those. So now I'm hoping this year to buy 4 parks and then stabilize them.
Why Orlando and Gainesville?
Gainesville's growing. I want to be in Florida, to be honest with you. I mean, I like the warm weather. I don't like paying taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And Gainesville's growing. It's a good area. So is Orlando. I used to try to be more toward the coast, but I had a guy named Pace Morby.
Oh,
yeah. You ever heard of him?
Yeah, I heard of him.
Yeah, he told me, like, why are you trying to buy stuff by the ocean that keeps getting taken away? And I was like, well, I kind of want to be by the ocean.
True.
So then I reeled it back and I'm buying more in Central Florida because it's a little bit more, like, not so susceptible to all the hurricane forces.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we got beat up by here this year too.
Yeah, man, Helene was no joke.
But that's why I shifted. That Central Florida area is still a good metro. Those areas are strong demand for affordable housing.
True.
And that's what I focus on in the mobile home park arena is affordable housing. And I feel like if I went back to those areas, there'd be good potential growth in the future.
Yeah. And I guess focusing on your Poor Man's Multifamily thing, I guess what are some pros when you compare a mobile home park to the multifamily?
Well, there's not quite as much competition in the prior year. I really was going towards apartments, and then I pivoted back to mobile home parks because there's just a lot of mobile home parks that are still mom and pop run, that have been in the family for generations, and nobody wants them because they have a stigma. They're just a mobile home park. But
gotcha.
It's affordable housing is becoming more and more prevalent now. It's on everybody's agenda. So it's so hard to find an affordable place to live.
Yep.
And when you step back and look at it, would you rather be in an overpriced apartment or would you rather be somewhere you had a front yard? That we'll sell the houses back to the tenants on lease options basically, and then they have a potential they can own their own house and have their own front yard. And once I sold it back to them, the repairs are on them, so it's minimized repairs over time, and it really helps the people have an actual chance to own their own house.
Right. And there's also like a higher cash ROI compared to multifamilies, and also, I mean, like with multifamilies, you have to put a lot of money into it too, and you also have to wait a long time in order for you to get your money back.
Yeah, well, that could be the same way in mobile home parks. You can have to put a lot of money into it, especially if you. That's why you have to come to my class to learn about it, because I've had to put some money in ones, and that's also why I advocate on buying something that's already in place where you walk into some rent, because if you're infilling houses. Like the one right now that I bought 14 mobile homes for this year that I'm renovating and infilling, I mean, that's cash intensive. Yeah. It just is. And then you have to buy the houses so the workers have them there to be ready and renovate them, and all that's, a year before you ever get a turn on that. So.
True. Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you, dude, and I know you have to head out and work on your Owners Club homework. Yeah. But, where's the best place people can reach you at?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at Tyler Ware Real Estate. I'm going to try to be more prevalent on there. I've been posting there, and I'm going to start posting on my YouTube, which is also Tyler Ware Real Estate. So those are the two places that you can find me at. Awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate you giving us your time here, and I hope you have learned how to, at least start looking for mobile home parks and, how to scale and what to look out for whenever you come across these types of deals.